shit.
That was me, lost down an old forgotten road, stuck with no one in sight to help. I'd just spent the last week undertaking the most difficult trails I'd ever done, and had my arse saved by a beautiful family who took me in and laid my tent down for the night. In rainy season, if it starts to pour, you can be stuck between villages for days. So how did I make it out of that situation? Well, in this video, you're going to find out.
This has to be. Look at the old stonework.
Check out that morning view, eh? Bloody hell. Isn't that beautiful? I woke up that morning, tired and grateful, but a little worried about the conditions ahead. It had rained the night before, and a wise man once told me, the night before that is, that if it rains a lot, you can't get in or out of this village, sometimes for days. Fortunately, they assured me today was not that day. So I said my goodbyes to my new Hmong family and I set off, ready to finish the leftovers from the previous day.
This is my breakfast. Dry.
40 kilometres of the most remote, beautiful roads I'd ever driven in my life.
Whew.
Insanely beautiful views, mountainous terrain and rocks that could kick your wheel out at any given moment. My mission was to set out to find the old CIA base that would have been home to some of the best, most well-trained guerrilla fighters in the Civil War. Unfortunately, due to some fascinating things you'll find out in this episode, the people who fought against communism are few and far between. Because once the communists took control, those Hmong families who fought would have to traverse harsh jungle terrain to reach borders with Thailand and Cambodia to flee an almost unmistakable punishment of re-education or labour camps. Most of those who were caught never left, and most of those who made the journey died during the journey. I was now about to make my way to the most secret place on Earth, the largest, most secret CIA base in the Civil War, once home to 50,000 people, now with only 3,000 left over after the mass evacuation and fleeing of the Hmong tribes. But first, it would be time to stop off at a very interesting town and hotel that would link in with our story somehow. Ooh, I wonder how, Harry. Please let me know in the next couple of minutes. Yeah, I'm gonna fucking let you know.
Google Maps said 2 hours. It took 2 days to make it to actual road.
It was time to head for Long Tieng. But unfortunately, with minimal daylight, I would not make it in time that day. If I'm honest with you, I'd almost given up with the trip at this point. Not all of it, just some points on the map. I was tired, all of my things were soaked and dirty, and my spirits were quite low. So I changed my plan to get to Long Tieng and head straight for Vang Vieng or Vientiane. Well, God had other plans, and all routes to Vang Vieng had been shut off from landslides. The only way out was the way I had originally planned. Despite being annoyed at the time, I'm so very grateful that happened. What would come in the next few days and weeks would be otherworldly adventure I will never, ever forget. And writing that down now makes my hair stand on end and brings a tear of joy to my eye. Anyway, let's not get emotional. After riding beautifully paved roads, well, for Laos that is, I ended up in some weird mining town close to Long Tieng. And after looking at both guest houses there, I decided to drive a further 40 kilometres. After driving here, I arrived in one of the most interesting cities I had ever been to. It's currently being built, and I learned from a local that it's recently become its own province. Just a few years ago, this place would have been a small village and an army outpost surrounded by trees. Why? Well, after the Civil War, some Hmong were left fighting the communist government, and it took 3 to 4 years for the armed forces to rid the area of them. But now they have, and here lies Hotel Land. Not realising why it had been given that name, I asked the restaurant why over a bowl of delicious pho, and they said, because it looks like New Zealand here. Now, I've never been to New Zealand, but comparing photos side by side, it really does look similar. And in that moment it hit me. I knew there was a reason I thought I was in Lord of the Rings.
Bloody hell, the Hobbit feet have really come out to play, haven't they? Frodo!
Anyway, I'd rest here for a night or two, enjoying the beauty of it all, and then set off for Long Chien, dubbed as the most secret place on Earth.
Alright, so 2 nights spent here. It's about 7:30 in the morning. We're going to get some breakfast, pack up my stuff, and get back on the road. Oh dear.
I set off that morning, excited to discover what I thought would be the height of my trip. Everything the past couple of weeks had been building to this big crescendo. Everything I had learned, everything I had planned, I thought was coming to an end. But I'd be wrong. There was more to come. Ooh, foreshadowing, friend. Anyway, the roads to this place were pretty mad, but nothing we hadn't dealt with already. I ended up in another weird mining facility, with huge great bits of rock cutting into the sky, lorries passing and fumes clogging the already humid air. Here, I stopped at a small truck stop, ordered my favourite kaijiao and kaoniao, met some locals who worked here, and then set on my way again. After riding incredibly muddy rocky roads through these areas and stunning views,
I must say, what a beautiful view while you're going for your business.
as fate would have it, I would meet with some more trucks. And as it turns out, it would be quite a few. Well, here, I'd make a wrong turn, trying to avoid the liquid mud fun slide on the left of me. And with rocks in the way and a huge gradient with no space to turn around, I was stuck. Part of the lorry gang, parked uphill.
Here's what it's like on these trails.
I was watching fascinated at how workers manoeuvre tons of weight in huge vehicles down roads that are not at all suited for this kind of work. And after waiting for 30 minutes to an hour, whatever was at the bottom of the slide had figured itself out, and I'd be back on the move behind lorries because I didn't want to take the deeper, muddier sections and slide off my bike down the hill. As I passed the final lorry, I saw how dangerous it can be transporting goods around these regions. Some smashed front lights and a completely twisted metal frame that would have once been a fully operating cargo transport machine. Anyway, the roads got better after this, and I floored it to Long Chien, excited to see the old remnants of a forgotten past. The most secret place has quite a ring to it. But I would find in later days that, in my humble opinion, it was no longer the most secret place. There were less travelled paths, with more adventurous roads to older bases that had not even been put on a map yet. Next episode.
Smoke weed every day.
I had to drive back for this. Who in the world is going to go here? And on the way back, I saw a Chinese plated car. And I thought, of course, the Chinese.
After a difficult passage through the mountains, I was on the home stretch.
Hey, listen to our car!
And I found myself surrounded by wonderful nature and one of the first propaganda signs I would actually agree with.
Stop the spread of pornography across all platforms. You know what, Laos? I fucking agree with that one. I'm saluting you to that.
After a few hours drive, I ended up in the most secret base on Earth by 4 PM, ready for some exploration. Although this base was never taken or stormed by the communist forces, unfortunately it has now been claimed by the army. So you can't see much inside, but you can drive up the airfield. Long Tieng will be home to 50,000 people by the 1970s. The second largest city at the time, made up almost entirely of Hmong people, and hadn't even appeared on a map yet.
Oh my god. This is it. The former airfield that would host the most secret base that would house most of the Hmong, the ethnic tribe who would fight against the Pathet Lao. The Pathet Lao flag is now here. Obviously the Pathet Lao won, and Lao is now Lao because of, yeah, the Pathet Lao. But here Vang Pao would organise a huge amount of forces, of Hmong forces, to fight a guerrilla battle.
3 major battles happened here in a spot dubbed Skyline Ridge, standing 3,100 feet of elevation above sea level. Something we'll learn about a little later. And the horrific bombing and tragic falling of men trying to mount the ridge. And also something we might almost do later on. Hint hint, nudge nudge. First, there are a couple of interesting points I wanted to see. An old house of the Hmong tribe leader who died in exile. Another secret base left to rot. And some mini games. Don't mind if I do.
Look what we found. Found a little bowls set. Oish, look at that in the distance. Just imagine over those ridges, Air America planes coming down and landing here with supplies, Hmong soldiers coming to collect them. Wow, what a different time it would have been back in 1959 is when it started. I don't know when the base opened, but I would imagine the 1960s.
I'd done everything I wanted to see, apart from the treacherous Skyline Ridge. But that was for tomorrow, after some rest at a guest house, with a lady who would tell me about the horrors the war left behind.
แล้วพูดแล้วมันยังดีอยู่แล้วเป็นซับ
ยังมีอยู่ที่นี่
มี
โอ้
มีหลาย
อุ้ยคนตายเยอะๆโอ้ย
สมัยสงครามล่ะอเมริกาล่ะทิ่มระเบิดหลายเยอะ
The Americans dropped over 2 million tons of ordnance on Laos, making it the most heavily bombed country per capita in history. Much of this bombing focused on major battles such as the Battle for Skyline Ridge in Long Tieng and the Plain of Jars, which we'll see later, and Skyline Ridge sooner than later. Anyway, it was time to head off for Skyline Ridge by total accident, because Google would send me down an old disused road that was the very road that would lead to Skyline Ridge. Thanks, Google. You sent me in the right direction for this episode, but you almost might have got me killed.
ไปเด้อคอยไปเด้อเดินทางปลอดภัย
ค่อยๆไปเดินทางปลอดภัยโอ้ยโอเคเข้าใจหลาย
After having a plentiful rest at the guest house and drying out my hand-washed clothes, I set off for Skyline Ridge, and what was supposed to be a trip to an old refugee camp, and finally the Plain of Jars. But before heading off, I would stop for breakfast, where I'd meet 2 cheeky businesswomen who saw an opportunity to try and sell me a bucket load of sticky rice.
ๆนุ่งกิโลไม่เอานุ่งกิโล1,000 บาทบ่15ไม่เป็นไรคิดว่าไปร้านเท่านี้มีร้านอาหารบ่สระสันอาหารเช้าไม่มีโอ้บ่มีไม่เป็นไรขอบใจ 10,000 ก็ได้ 10,000 ก็ได้ Trying to get more money out of me and then telling me there's no restaurant here. There is a restaurant here. I know there's a restaurant here.
After a great breakfast and some laughs, I would head out of town, driving on nicely paved roads, which would all of a sudden turn into steep switchbacks with gravel, rocks and huge inclines. Something which my 125 was not enjoying. These would be the least of my worries for the day, as when I got to the top, after taking in the beautiful views.
Bloody hell, this is beautiful, but don't that look like the road that people used to use for that video where the fucking...
Google Maps told me to turn off left, down an old road that I would come to find that even none of the locals use anymore. This was the crescendo, the scariest, steepest trails I'd seen. It virtually wasn't road. It was grass patches, slabs of moss-covered rock face that sent me spinning around once, but after the first warning, I decided it was a good idea to keep going. Huge rocks to kick out the wheel into large crevices eroded by rain and flash floods, and steep corners with sheer drops either side. It was like nothing I'd encountered before. This was professional level stuff, and I was here, doing it on a 125 with only about 20 days of experience on trails. As I got further in, my breathing got deeper and more regulated to calm myself as I inched down each gravel section slowly, hoping I wouldn't slip. I kept saying to myself, it's okay, I can handle this, until I went crashing down into a ditch. Although I didn't know it at the time, this would be a blessing. I now had approximately an hour until heavy rains came and this became flood territory. Now I had to pull out my bike from a tree in a ditch I'd fallen into, on an incredibly steep incline, with virtually no grip on my shoes due to gravel slipping. I don't know if you've ever tried to lift 125 kilos out of a ditch on an incline. It's very hard.
There is no way I'm doing this, man. I'm heading back. This is too fucked for a 125. Yeah, this is just undrivable, man. I've slipped twice already. Almost rolled my ankle. No way. I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. I value my life too much. Come on. Pull. Okay. Perfect. Fuck off. Oh shit.
There was no sign of anybody up or down this road, and memories of the previous trails were coming back. I know I wasn't far from the nearest person, but it worried me. Until I had a bright idea.
Hold up. If I can get it turned round, that might work. Oh, yes, 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 yes. Push it up. Okay, kick stand. This was a very stupid idea. Just imagine if I'd gone any further. I would have not made that out.
So what happened on Skyline Ridge, and why was it so important that I made it there?
If the Vietnamese could get to Long Tieng, they could get to Vientiane and storm the capital. So they sent 27,000 troops up this ridge to fight a force of only 4,000 Hmong and Thai. That's a 1-to-6 ratio. Over 10,000 Vietnamese died, and over half the Hmong fighting force died, and many died in brutal hand-to-hand combat where they'd gut each other with Bowie knives and beat each other to death. Well, this ridge was never taken.
After making it out of that situation, I would head back to the town to try and ask about the roads. The man at the guest house was insistent there was only one road until the next day, when he remembered the small turnoff. I would try and find another way out of the town that day, but I got reined in.
I am so glad I got off that road.
And was offered tea by a nice old lady who originally came from India. Then as it got later in the day, I decided it was best to stay another night, to tackle the roads ahead and maybe replan the journey. So, Until next time, boys and girls.